My girlfriend treated me like her personal errand boy for months, until I treated her like a roommate and made her beg for forgiveness with one cold action. Name's Mason Mercer. I'm 38 and run a small auto shop on the edge of town with my buddy Rex Dalton. Grease feels like it's in my blood. My hands are always cut up from wrenches and carburetors, but I don't mind. At the shop, things make sense. If something's broken, you figure out why and fix it. Most mornings, I'm up before sunrise. I run a couple miles, feed the dog, warm up my old truck, and head to work. It's quiet, predictable, mine. Rex and I have known each other since high school, so we don't need to talk much. He can spot a quarter turn off just by looking at it. Guys like that are rare. Home isn't the same. Home is Sabrina Vale. We've been together for years, living together for half that time. On paper, she looks good, smart, pretty, stylish, but the house doesn't feel like mine anymore. Every night she's glued to her phone. If I reach for her, she rolls away. Every morning, there's a list on the counter, dry cleaning, a rattle in her car, a package to drop. It's like I'm staff in my own house. I didn't say anything for a long time. I thought patience would make it better. I'd lie there at night staring at the ceiling fan while she typed away on that phone. Patience only buys you silence, not respect. One morning, she came into the kitchen in her robe, one slipper dragging, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. She didn't even look at me when she started firing things off. Don't forget my car today, it's rattling again, and I need you to grab my dry cleaning. Also, call my sister about her birthday thing. I don't have time. I kept sipping my coffee, quiet. Then she sighed like I was already failing her, and said the line that ended it for me. I honestly can't even imagine wanting to sleep with you anymore. You feel more like my assistant than my man. Assistant. She said it flat, like she was talking about the weather. I didn't get mad, didn't yell. I just looked at her, then at the list she'd already left on the counter. 3 items this time: car, dry cleaning, some appointment reminder. I sipped my coffee, set the mug down and said, "Good. I don't share a bed with someone who sees me as staff." Her head snapped up like she didn't expect me to answer at all. She opened her mouth like she was going to fire back, then closed it. The silence in that kitchen was heavier than anything we'd had in bed for months. Inside my head, it felt like a switch flipping. That was it. No speeches, no begging, no negotiations. I was done the second those words left her mouth. The dog was at my feet, tail wagging like nothing happened. I reached down, scratched behind his ears, and thought, he treats me more like a man than she does. She grabbed her phone and walked off without another word, probably to add more tasks to her notes app. I stood there another minute, finished my coffee, and stared out the window at the frost on the truck windshield. That frost was more honest than she'd been in months. That day at the shop, I didn't tell Rex right away. I just worked, rebuilt a carb, checked torque on a set of heads, cleaned tools twice as long as usual. My brain kept replaying her line like she thought it was funny or safe to say. Rex finally noticed I was quieter than normal. He rolled over on his stool, wiped his hands on a rag, and said, "You look like a guy who slept on a question mark." I smirked and answered, "Closer to a period." He raised an eyebrow but didn't push. That's why Rex has been my friend for 20 years. On the drive home that night, I already knew things were different. I didn't feel angry. I felt lighter, like something clicked into place. All those lists on the counter, all those nights of silence, all the little digs in front of people, it all added up to the same math. She didn't respect me, and I wasn't going to bargain for it anymore. When I walked into the house, Sabrina was at the table scrolling her phone, earbuds in. She didn't look up. The next morning, her list was waiting for me on the counter again. Same handwriting, same tone. I didn't even read it. I just folded it into a paper airplane, gave it one clean flick, and let it land in the sink. By the time she came in, I was already lacing my boots. She noticed right away. "You think you're funny?" she said, picking the soggy paper out of the sink. I didn't even look at her. "I'm not your operations team. Handle your own calendar." She stared at me for a beat like she was waiting for me to take it back. I didn't. She let out that little scoff she does when she doesn't win right away, then stormed off. I drove to the shop in silence, dog riding shotgun, head clearer than it had been in months. At work, Eli was struggling with a stripped bolt on a manifold. The kid's only been around a year, eager but green. I walked over, tapped the wrench out of his hand, and said, "You don't muscle it. Back it off first, ease it, then bring it home, otherwise you'll be drilling it out." I showed him the angle slow and steady, then let him finish it himself. When he got it right, I clapped, on the shoulder. "Now you'll remember. It's always about feel, not force." Rex rolled over on his stool, watching. "You've been on edge lately," he said, not unkind. I shrugged, just drawing lines. He raised his brows but didn't push. That's Rex. Always direct, but he doesn't fish when you're not offering. That night, Sabrina tried a new tactic. She leaned against the counter while I made dinner, smirking like she was above it all. "So, what's this new thing, you ignoring me to get attention?" I plated my food, set it down, and said, "No, I'm just not playing anymore." She laughed. "God, you're dramatic. You act like I owe you something." I said, Respect isn't something you owe, it's basic. That shut her up for about 10 seconds. Then she smirked again like she'd found another angle. If you're so miserable, why don't you just leave? I took a bite, chewed, swallowed. I don't bluff. She rolled her eyes and walked out. I finished dinner in peace. A few days later, we were out to dinner with two couples we've known for years. The servers slid plates around, glasses sweating, silverware clinking. Sabrina was already in show mode, chin up, eyes bright. Between small talk about flights and daycare waits, she tilted her wine and said, "You wouldn't believe how much Mason nags me about my phone. He acts like I'm cheating on him with Instagram." The table offered polite chuckles, the kind people use when they're choosing sides without saying it. I set my fork down, squared it with the knife, and looked at her. "We don't do digs." The chuckles stalled, someone cleared a throat. The server appeared with a basket of bread like a parachute. Sabrina tried to smirk it off, relax, it was a joke, but nobody picked it up. I took a sip of water and went back to my steak. Conversation limped along about long weekends. In the car, she crossed her arms and stared through the windshield. "You embarrassed me." "No," I said, easing us onto the road. I corrected the record. She turned to the window and stayed there the whole drive, her reflection scowling back at her. I kept my hands at 10 and 2 and let the tires do the talking. The more she pushed, the less I reacted. That was the new rule. She'd try to tease me, make little comments, fish for a rise. One morning she walked past me as I tied my boots and said, "You're getting so serious lately. Don't tell me you're going through some midlife crisis." I stood up, grabbed my keys and said, "Crisis is needing someone's approval, I don't." Another night she came into the living room while I was sketching a frame design for a bike rebuild. She leaned over the back of the couch. "Do you really think anyone cares about that old junk you mess with? You spend more time with bolts than me." I didn't even look up, bolts don't nag. She huffed and left the room. I went right back to sketching. My time shifted more toward myself. I doubled down on the early runs, dusted off the weights in the garage, and started lifting after work. The bike project took up my evenings, an old frame I'd been meaning to rebuild for years. Piece by piece, it started looking like something again. The dog would curl up in the garage while I worked. Sabrina barely came out there anymore, and that suited me fine. Rex noticed the difference. One afternoon, he found me filing a bracket smooth and said, "You look lighter, meaner too." "Both," I said. He grinned. "That's usually a sign a man's making decisions." "Yeah," I said, not looking up from the file, finally. By the end of that week, Sabrina's little games weren't landing. She'd toss a jab, I'd let it hit the floor. She'd try to get under my skin, and I'd just move past her like she wasn't even there. The thing about people who rely on digs is they need a reaction. Without one, they're just talking to themselves. And me, I was done supplying the audience. The shift came fast. After weeks of rolling her eyes and throwing digs, Sabrina suddenly decided to act sweet again. One Thursday night, I came home late from the shop and found the table set, real plates, candles, the whole thing. She was in the kitchen pulling a tray out of the oven. "Surprise," she said, smiling too wide. "I made dinner." I sat down, looked at the plates, then at her. "All right." She poured me a glass of wine and leaned across the table. "See, I'm trying." I cut into the chicken, chewed, swallowed, effort noted. "Affection isn't a coupon, though." Her smile twitched. "God, you can't even let me be nice without turning it into some lecture." I shrugged and kept eating. She pouted for the rest of the meal, but I finished every bite. The nice phase kept going. The next morning, she packed me a lunch like we were in high school, left it on the counter with a note that said, "Love you." I tossed it in the fridge for later, drove to work, and ate it cold out of the container. At least the sandwich was decent. That weekend, she upped the act. "Let's do a date night," she said, standing in the doorway while I worked on the bike frame. "I've got work here. Come on, Mason, dinner, movie, just us. You keep saying you want time together." I wiped my hands on a rag and looked at her. No, what I wanted was respect. A date night doesn't buy that. She sighed dramatically. "You're impossible." I went back to tightening bolts. Sunday morning at the grocery store was when her mask slipped. We were halfway down the dairy aisle. She was scrolling her phone, not even looking up when she said, "Grab the almond milk." I pushed the cart forward. She raised her voice. "Mason, grab the almond milk." I stopped, turned, and said flat, "Handle your own cereal crisis, then push the cart ahead." She froze, cheeks red. Realizing people were looking, she grabbed the carton herself and stomped after me. The rest of the trip she muttered under her breath and sighed loud enough for strangers to hear. I didn't respond once. At checkout, she tried to slide her card like always. I handed mine to the cashier first and said, "Separate." She blinked. "Since when?" "Since now." The cashier split the bags without a word. Sabrina glared at me all the way to the truck. That night, she cornered me in the kitchen. "You embarrassed me at the store." I poured a coffee. "No," I said, "a rule. There's a difference. You're being petty." "No," I said, calm. "I'm being proportional." Her mouth opened, closed, then she stormed off. Monday evening, I decided to make it official. I called her into the living room, set my laptop on the table, and spun it around. Spreadsheet open, columns labeled utilities, rent, groceries, extras. She frowned. What is this? Our new system. She crossed her arms. You're kidding. I tapped the screen. Welcome to Roommate Incorporated. Effective immediately. Her face twisted. You're actually insane. No, I'm done mixing responsibilities with disrespect. You want to treat me like an assistant? Fine, assistant's bill's hourly. This is cheaper. You can't just... I already did. She stared at me, silent for once. I sipped my coffee and let the numbers sit between us. The next few days were icy. She clanged dishes louder than usual, slammed cabinet doors, stomped through the house. I didn't acknowledge any of it. I paid my share of the bills directly, bought my own groceries, cooked my own meals. She tried another swing one night while I sat on the couch. Do you know how insane this looks? We live together. People are going to think we're splitting like college roommates. Then don't tell them, I said, flipping the page of the manual I was reading. She huffed. You're punishing me. I looked up calm. No, I'm adjusting. Punishment is about anger, this is about balance. Her face flushed red. Balance? You're humiliating me. I leaned back, then stopped giving me reasons to rebalance. She stormed out, slammed the bedroom door, the dog barely flinched. The funny thing was, once the system was in place, I slept better. Bills split. Food separate. Responsibilities divided. The air felt clearer. No more lists waiting for me on the counter. She tried once, left one out with a little smiley face like she was softening the blow. I slid it back across the table and said, Flights are still grounded. She tore it in half and tossed it in the trash. I almost smiled. The fake affection didn't last long after that. She kept trying little jabs, little tests, but I didn't bite. When she cooked, I ate it and said thank you, but never gave her the reaction she was hunting for. When she touched my arm like she used to, I finished what I was doing before moving away. She wanted me on a leash. She didn't realize I'd already cut it. And me, I just kept building my bike, lifting in the garage, and living like a man who didn't need a performance to feel steady. Mrs. Alvarez had been on me all week about coming to the neighborhood barbecue. She's the kind of neighbor you can't say no to. Late 60s, sharp eyes, always polite but firm. If she tells you to show up, you show up. So Sunday afternoon, Sabrina and I walked down the street carrying a half pan of cornbread I'd baked that morning. The yard was full already, folding chairs, coolers, smoke rolling off the grill, kids riding bikes too close to the tables. Marco, her son, was at the grill. Mason, he shouted, holding up a spatula. You still fixing junk cars or running a real shop yet? I smirked. Depends what you drive up in. He laughed and handed me a plate. Sabrina slid in beside me, arm brushing mine. She had that bright, practiced smile she saves for public. We made the rounds, said hi to a few neighbors, then sat at a folding table under the oak tree. Mrs. Alvarez settled across from us, baby on her lap, giving me that half-curious, half-knowing look. It didn't take long for Sabrina to make her move. Conversation was light, neighbors swapping talk about school districts and grocery prices. Then Sabrina leaned forward, eyes on me, and said loud enough for the table, You wouldn't believe how grumpy Mason's been lately. He acts like I can't live without his approval. People chuckled, polite and awkward, the kind of laugh you give because you don't know what else to do. I set my fork down, looked right at her, and said, Careful, Sabrina. You're confusing honesty with disrespect. They're not the same. The table went silent. Even Marco stopped flipping burgers for a second. Sabrina blinked, face coloring, then laughed too loud. I was just teasing. I picked my fork back up and kept eating, didn't add another word. The neighbors shifted the conversation to the weather. The air was different, though. They'd all heard it. On the walk home, Sabrina finally snapped. You embarrassed me, she hissed. No, I said. I clarified you. She stopped on the sidewalk. Do you even hear yourself? You sounded insane. I looked at her calm. Insane is letting people think they can laugh at me while you feed them lines. She clenched her jaw and stormed ahead. Heels hitting the pavement hard, I let her go. That week, the cling phase started. Saturday morning, we walked the farmer's market. String bags, sun on the stalls, somebody testing a speaker with old country. She threaded her arm through mine and turned toward a couple from our street. This is my Mason, she said, voice dipped in honey. We're great, right, babe? She laughed before I could answer. The couple smiled the way people do when they've been handed a brochure. I picked through tomatoes, weighed 2 in my palm, paid for eggs, and kept my answers short. She kept narrating us for the crowd, little squeezes, quick kisses on the shoulder, a high laugh that didn't belong to her. When she tried to lace our fingers for the 3rd time, I gently freed my hand to count cash and tuck the change. No scene, just transactions. In the parking lot, she locked the hatch a little too hard. You're making me look desperate, she said, heat rolling off the asphalt. I slid the carton of eggs into the cooler so they wouldn't crack, then looked at her. "Stop advertising." She scoffed, climbed into the passenger seat, and stared out at nothing. I drove us home with the windows down and the radio off. The bag shifted once and back, settled and stayed put, the way things do when you load them evenly and quit pretending they're light. Her little shows didn't bother me. If anything, they made it easier to keep distance. The more she reached, the less I reacted. She was running out of levers, so I poured more of myself into my own time. Early mornings meant longer runs. After work, I'd hit the garage gym, bench, deadlifts, pull-ups, no music, no distractions, just weight and breath. At the shop, I focused harder on Eli. He'd been making progress, learning to read the feel of the tools instead of just muscling through mistakes. One afternoon, he tightened a belt without me stepping in once. When it ran smooth, he grinned like a kid. "Getting it," I said. "Rex overheard. About time you train him, right?" he joked. Eli laughed, wiping his hands. "It's easier when he actually explains stuff instead of just glaring." I smirked. Glare is part of the process. They laughed, and for a second the shop felt like a place where things still worked. Even the dog seemed calmer. When Sabrina walked through the door, he'd stay put on his bed. But when I walked in, he'd lift his head, tail thumping, waiting for me to scratch his ears. It didn't go unnoticed. One night, Sabrina pointed at him and said, "He doesn't even listen to me anymore. You've turned him against me." I glanced at the dog, then back at her. Dogs don't fake it, they just know. She looked like she wanted to throw something. Instead, she stormed off again. By the end of that week, the pattern was set. Sabrina pushed harder in public, trying to glue herself to me. I stayed cold, steady, polite. The more she performed, the more obvious it became that she was the only one acting. Neighbors noticed. Mrs. Alvarez especially didn't say a word, just nodded once like she already knew. And me, I wasn't worried about managing optics anymore. I was too busy drawing lines. One day, I was sorting the mail pile on Sabrina's desk when the corner of her notebook caught my eye. Spiral-bound pink cover, her handwriting all over it. Normally, I wouldn't care, but the page it was open to stopped me. It looked like a checklist, columns and boxes. At the top it read Mason Plan. The first line read, "Car fixed, cook dinner, affection later, errand done. Compliment, small reward, ignore bad attitude. No closeness, lesson learned." I read down the page. My stomach went still. It wasn't a to-do list, it was a system, a way to manage me. I set the mail aside, carried the notebook to the kitchen, and set it in the center of the table. When she came in from her workout class, leggings still on, hair pulled back, she froze the second she saw it. "What's that?" she asked too quick. "Your notes," I said. My voice was even. "Want to explain why I'm a program?" She laughed nervously. "Oh my God, you're snooping through my stuff now. That's pathetic." "No," I tapped the page. "Pathetic is reducing me to a flowchart." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't even know what that is. You're twisting it." "Really? Car fixed equals affection. Looks pretty clear." She crossed her arms. "It's just a journal." I was venting. "Writing stuff down helps me process." "Process?" I leaned back. "You call affection a coupon and chores a price tag. That's not processing, that's manipulation." She slammed her water bottle down. "You always overreact. I was trying to organize my thoughts. You act like everything I do is some master plan against you." I didn't blink. "That's because it is. You don't give respect. You ration it." Her jaw clenched. "You're twisting everything. I'm the one who keeps this house together. You should be thanking me." "For what? Turning intimacy into a loyalty program?" She threw up her hands. "God, listen to yourself. You're paranoid." "No," I said. "I'm awake. Big difference." That shut her up for a beat. Then the tears started, right on cue. "You don't understand how hard I try," she said, voice cracking. "Do you think I like fighting with you? I just want us to be normal again." I didn't move. Normal died the day you made respect optional. She covered her face with her hands. "Why you being so cruel?" "Cruel?" I shook my head. "Cruel is telling a man he's only worth affection when he runs your errands. Cruel is treating me like a dog to be trained. I'm just putting words to it." She looked up, eyes red. "So what? You're just going to throw this away? All these years?" "I didn't throw anything. You dismantled it piece by piece. I'm just the one calling time of death." Her expression hardened. "You'll regret this. You're not going to find someone who puts up with you." I stood calm. Respect isn't something to put up with. If that's your baseline, then you never saw me as a partner, just staff. She pushed the notebook away like it burned. "You think you're so righteous. You're really just cold. That's why this doesn't work. You don't feel anything." "Wrong again," I said. "I feel plenty. I just don't waste it on someone who treats closeness like a reward chart." She shook her head. Tears streaking now, "So that's it. You're just done." "Respect isn't negotiable," I said. "You cross the line. I don't step back over it." She slammed the bedroom door so hard the picture frames rattled. That night I sat in the garage with the dog lying by my boots. I pulled out my phone, opened a rental app, and bookmarked a short-term sublet across town, 2 bedrooms, small garage, good enough for now. The next day at lunch, I called a storage unit and reserved one, cheap, month to month. I already knew which tools and clothes I'd move first. By Thursday, I'd packed 2 boxes of essentials, work gear, spare clothes, old Photo S albums, lined them up neatly against the garage wall. I stacked the rest on shelves, ready to load when I decided. Every move felt clean, surgical. Sabrina, meanwhile, acted like nothing had happened. She tried cooking again, left little notes on the counter with hearts drawn in the margins. I slid them straight into the trash without reading. When she asked one night, "So, are we good now?" I just looked at her and said, "No, we're accurate now." Her face fell, but I didn't explain further. I didn't need to. I'd already started the exit. It was a Saturday morning, daylight spilling across the kitchen table. I set my coffee down, looked straight at Sabrina, and said it clean. "I don't negotiate basic respect. I'm done." She blinked, stunned for a second, then laughed like I was bluffing. "Oh, stop. You're not going anywhere." I slid the spare key across the table, already packed, her face twisted. "You're serious?" I stood, grabbed my duffel from the chair, completely. She scrambled after me down the hall. "So what, you're just leaving? Walking away from everything we built?" I turned calm. "We didn't build, I bought, you managed. I'll be taking what's mine." Her eyes went wide. "Excuse me?" I pointed toward the living room. "That couch I paid for. The dining table, too. TV stand, rug, half the kitchenware. I'll load it today." "You can't just strip the house," she snapped. "It isn't the house, it's me. You wanted an assistant. Now you can run errands from the floor." She gasped, speechless. The dog padded past her to stand at my heel like he'd already chosen. By noon, the truck was backed up to the garage. Rex showed up with his flatbed and a grin. "Didn't think you'd actually do it this fast." I shrugged. "When a machine's dead, you don't argue with it, you salvage the parts worth keeping. We hauled everything out piece by piece." She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, spitting little lines under her breath. "You're pathetic. Who takes furniture in a breakup? That's petty." I didn't stop moving. "Who buys it owns it, that's fair." She followed me out to the truck. "Everyone's going to think you're insane." "Let them," I said, setting the dresser down. She threw her hands in the air and stormed back inside. By the time we were finished, the house looked hollow, bare spots on the carpet where the couch had been, blank wall where the TV used to hang, the kitchen echoing without the table. I carried the last box out, photo albums, tools, a framed picture of my father, and loaded it onto the truck bed. Sabrina stood at the porch railing, shaking her head. "You'll regret this, Mason. You're going to wake up alone and wish you'd fought for us." I climbed into the driver's seat. Regret is cheaper than disrespect. Word spread quick. Mrs. Alvarez caught me unloading the truck at the new place later that day. She walked over, arms folded, sharp eyes soft for once. "You moved fast." "Had to," I answered. She nodded slowly. "People will talk." "Let them," I said. "Opinions don't pay rent." She gave me one of her rare smiles. "Good man." Then walked back across the street. The new place sat near the river. 2 bedrooms, small garage, a patch of yard just big enough for the dog to stretch. First thing I did was put up a pegboard and hang my wrenches in order. Order made the space feel mine. The dog settled in quick. He stretched out on the bare floor while I bolted the couch back together. For the first time in months, he didn't pace the hall at night. He just slept. Mornings were quiet again. I brewed coffee, watched the sun come up over the river, and didn't check my phone until noon. On Sundays, Rex and his wife came by. She brought casseroles. He brought beer. We grilled in the yard, dog running between us, laughter carrying without effort. It felt like life had air again. "You look 10 pounds lighter," Rex's wife said once. "Furniture weighs a lot," I deadpanned, and Rex nearly choked laughing. A week later, I was at the hardware store picking up sandpaper for the bike project. I was standing in front of 2 racks trying to decide grit when a woman next to me said, "It's not a moral decision, just pick one." I glanced over. Short brown hair, work boots, sharp eyes. She smiled without trying too hard. "Depends on the job," I said. She raised a brow. "Depends on the guy." We both laughed. Easy. Her name was Harper Quinn. We ended up comparing notes on sanding blocks, then somehow arguing over torque specs like we'd known each other a while. At checkout, I reached for my wallet, but she slid her card first. "Get it next time," she said like it wasn't a question. I paused, then nodded. No scoreboard, easy. By the time I got back to the garage, sandpaper in hand, the dog waiting, I realized the house finally felt like mine again. Quiet, honest. No lists on the counter, no games. Just me, my tools, and the weight of furniture I'd earned and taken with me. Months later, the bike project finally came together. All the sanding, fitting, and adjusting clicked. One Saturday at sunrise, I rolled it out of the garage, kicked it to life, and let the idol sit clean. I eased it down the empty dirt lane at a crawl. The dog loped the ditch line for 100 yards, peeled off, and beat me back to the driveway. It felt like breathing again. That same afternoon, she texted me for the first time in months. A picture of the cabin brochure still pinned to her fridge. Underneath she wrote, "We could have had this." I typed back, "We had plenty, just not the thing that matters." No reply came for a while, silence held. A week later I got the real attempt. It was late evening when there was a knock at the door. The dog growled low. I opened it to find Sabrina standing there, makeup smudged, wearing one of those dresses she used to save for date nights. "Mason," she said, voice low, "please, we don't have to end like this. I miss you." I didn't move. "What do you miss? The furniture? The system?" Her lip trembled. "No, I miss us. I miss how you used to look at me. I can change. I'll do better. Just don't throw us away." The dog sat at my feet, silent. I leaned against the doorframe. "Respect wasn't yours to ration. You don't get another round." Tears welled up. She stepped closer, hand reaching for mine. "I'll do anything. Just tell me what you want. I'll make it work." I pulled my hand back. "I don't train partners." She froze, face hardening. The tears shut off like a faucet, so that's it. "You're going to act like you're better than me." "You're nothing without me, Mason. Nothing. No one else is going to put up with your stubborn crap." I almost smiled. Good. Then I'll finally be surrounded by honesty. Her jaw clenched. She tried to sneer, but it came out shaky. "You're going to regret this. You'll be crawling back when you realize I was the only one who could handle you." I stepped forward just enough to close the gap. Calm, steady, I don't crawl. Not for anyone. Her mouth opened, shut, opened again, no comeback. She shook her head, muttered something under her breath, and stormed down the driveway. The dog watched her go, then laid back down on the porch. I closed the door and locked it. Life didn't stall. Harper was already in my orbit, not as a rebound, but as someone who didn't need a scoreboard to be kind. She came by one Sunday with a box of clamps for the table we were building together. "Hold that side," she said, bracing a leg while I lined up the joint. I pressed it steady, tightened the clamp, and we both leaned back. Simple, no games, no performance, just two people building something side by side. "You realize it's lopsided, right?" she said, smirking. I looked at it, then at her. Adds character. She laughed, genuine, no edge behind it. When we finished, the table was rough but solid. We set it on the porch, wiped the dust off our hands, and sat there with glasses of water. The dog sprawled across our feet like he finally trusted the space. "You ever regret it?" Harper asked, eyes on the river. "Regret waiting?" I said. "Not leaving?" She nodded like that was enough. It was. The texts from Sabrina stopped after that night at the door. No more photos, no more threats. Word around the neighborhood was she'd moved across town into a smaller place. Mrs. Alvarez mentioned it once over the fence, then let it drop. "Seems thinner," she said quietly. "I wish her well," I replied, "but I don't miss a thing." Mrs. Alvarez gave me a long look, then nodded. She never asked again. We grilled in the yard, the dog weaving between chairs, Rex's wife laughing at things that didn't need to be forced. It wasn't complicated, no digs, no lists, no tension, just people enjoying each other's company. One evening I took the bike out again, idling slow on the empty lane. The dog paced the edge for a short stretch, then circled back. The sun dropped low. I thought back to the house I'd left, the system I'd walked out of, the night she stood in my doorway begging, then flipping like a switch. Engines complain less than people. At least when they break, you know why. I don't chase, I build. Respect is the price of entry. When I got back, Harper was on the porch with a notebook sketching shelves for the garage. She held it up. "Think we can build these?" I nodded. "Easy, we've already got the clamps." We both laughed, simple and steady, and got to work. That night, with the dog asleep at our feet and the house quiet, I realized this was the baseline I should have protected from the start. Not noise, not performance, not a system of rewards, just respect earned and given without keeping score. And if anyone asked, I'd keep it simple. I don't negotiate for basic respect, not from anyone.